There. This is an interview for the Clark County Historical Society by Roland Matthies of Jack Harris, a recent resident of Oakwood Village. And the date is February 11, 2000. I still have trouble with that. And I'm here to inquire of him about his life, his career, his opinions of Springfield then and now, and whatever else he'd like to add within the limitations of this tape. So here you are, Jack. I know you're somewhat loquacious.
Yeah, I've never been accused of not being right.
Tell us about your lifespan. How did it start and where?
Well, I was born in Detroit, Michigan, and my father had his own business up there, but 1929 came along, and he lost his business because everybody else had business, and he came down to we came down to Marion, Ohio, which is where my maternal grandparents lived, and a place where we could.
I just walked in.
We had
back at the ranch.
However, we had an interruption here while Jack was being put back together. We'll go on.
I'm sure I lost my track. Just now to get me back on it.
You were born somewhere.
I was born. There we go. I was born in Detroit, Michigan, and left Detroit, Michigan when I was just in the first grade because my father, like everybody else in 1929, lost his business, and we came to Marion, Ohio, because my paternal grandparents lived in Marion, and it's a place to come to and kind of get back on his feet, which he did. And in fact, as a matter of fact, as he told me later, on his drive from Detroit, Michigan to Marion, Ohio, he stopped off to see somebody. He ended up getting a job as a district salesman. And so he had lost his business, but he wasn't unemployed like so many were back in 1929. And Marion was an interesting town to grow up in. Small town, 35,000, 40,000 people back in those days. Of course, the people up there remember the greatest thing that ever happened to them was Warren Harding came from Marion, Ohio. And an interesting sidelight to that a woman by the name of Nan Britton wrote a book called The President's Daughter. And this is a book that alleged that she was the illegitimate daughter of Warren Harding. And my aunt was in the same class with her in high school. And at the 50th reunion of the class of Marion Harding, Nan Britton called my aunt on the phone and said, "I understand they're having a class reunion down there." And of course, no one had thought or thinking, well, they thought a lot about it, but hadn't seen her for a long while. And she said she was going to come to Marion for the reunion. Well, that town was on a spin, of course. How anybody could say anything against their dear, great departed leader, Warren Harding, who probably goes down in history as one of the worst presidents in the history of the United States, if not the worst. But don't tell that to anybody in Marion. So we have a few little interesting sidelights in a small community, things of that nature up there. But it was, it's good to grow up in a smaller town, I think, anyway.
What brought you here?
In the Springfield area?
Yeah.
I came here, sort of circuitous. I had been in Chicago, and my father was here in Springfield. He operated one of Bruce Mayer's company. I don't know if you know who Bruce Mayer was. He don't remember things, and he's also headed the look on the bank and a lot of things are I'm sure. And
a dentist by profession.
A dentist by profession. That's right. That's right. And any number of people always wish he'd stayed as a dentist. Unfortunately, he and Bob Groff had their houses beside each other out on the interstate, which was kind of interesting since they hadn't spoken for about 4 years. But anyway, my father was a close friend of Bruce Mayer's, and it was pretty much had a lot with him to do with coming to Springfield, Ohio.
Well, what was your father's name?
Arthur Harris. Arthur Harris.
Okay.
And he was one of those people, a very hard-working man, had achieved a certain level of success, but he never got involved very much in the type of extracurricular activities like you do, and like I did too, as far as getting into community affairs. because he traveled most of his life, his business life. So he just never got too much involved in the community. Although people that knew him liked him very much, he was well thought, well respected.
Okay, where do you go? You're born. You're in Springfield.
Well, I was born in Detroit and came to Springfield when I was, well, actually, we came to their circuitous route because 1929 happened. And I just started in grade school in Detroit when the crash came. And my father had his own business in there, which, of course, he got wiped out like everybody else did in 1929. So he loaded everything, everybody up in the car, and headed for Marion, Ohio, where my maternal grandparents were located. And on the way down, he stopped by a company up in Woodville, Ohio. He knew some people there, and he had a job. So when he left Detroit, all he had was a car full of luggage and 2 kids and a wife. And by the time he got to Marion, Ohio, he had all his stuff, plus a job on top of it. He got back on his feet. And lived in Marion. I graduated from Marion Harding High School. Learned a lot of things about Warren Harding, particularly when I got out of town, because the ladies worked awfully hard to preserve Warren Harding's reputation. Oh, I thought, he was probably with Washington Lincoln. And I think that, I don't know how they ever found textbooks that were so able to boil it down. They were probably paid for by the local Board of Education, so I can figure out.
Yeah.
But,
and your dad came to Springfield for what reason?
Well, he came here because he...
what was the attraction?
The attraction was his good old family friend, Bruce Mayer. Do you know that name?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Martha Mayer and my mother were very close. And so socially, my father, because they get together, and socially, so they get together. And Bruce had was kicking around a couple of different things. I mean, in Springfield. And all of a sudden, he got involved. My dad came to town, and he said he used to stop out at the mayor's farm that had been right next to Bob Groff on the country there. And he stopped in, and Bruce had some stuff there, and he showed Dad. He said, here's some stuff, he said, because I just bought a building as a warehouse. And he said, here's the company was there. Well, Dad was going to the power show in New York. So he took this stuff on, he went to the power show, and he showed, you ever hear of this company? He said, yeah. He said, the masters haven't answered their mail in 25 years. And Dad said, I came back from the power show with 25 requests for quotation on power equipment, over $1.5 million worth. And I told Bruce what it was, and Bruce said, so he'd get in the car. So Bruce at that time was at the bank, so they drove up to Hoppus Manufacturing Company.
Hoppus?
Hoppus, H-O-P-P-E-S. Drove up to Hoppus Manufacturing Company, and talked to everybody there, and had my dad talk to him, and they said, now I'm going to declare recess. Everybody stay here. So he and Dad went out and sat in the car. And Dad said, he said to Dad, what do you think you can use in this bunch? And Dad said, what do you mean? He said, well, I brought everybody here for a reason. He said, you're going to run this place. He said, they don't know what the hell they're doing. And Dad said, I never worked for a friend of mine my entire life. And he said, I'm too late now. And Bruce said, if I guarantee you that I keep hands off of it, will you come and run it for me? So my dad said, if you clean the house, because I'm not going to do that. That's a terrible start for me. The first thing I do is fire half the people. He said, that's no way to run a business. So he said, Bruce took care of that, and we started, and that's the way that Hoppus Manufacturing returned to some area of strength and saved the company, and became the factor. It was interesting because Dad had stopped by Bruce and Martha and Bruce's for dinner, traveling through town, and Bruce had just acquired the Hoppus Manufacturing Company. He was going to use it as a storage for the Bundy Incubator Company. We had 2 incubators in Springfield, Ohio that had the whole market between Buckeye and Bundy, and he had this literature, and he gave it to Dad. He said, you're going to the power show in New York anyway. He said, well, take a look and see what you can find out about his company. And but he said, I got maybe some interest in buying all this junk. He said, because I'm going to make it in a warehouse. And Dad talked to some people in New York, came back to Bruce, and he said, you didn't buy a building, you bought a business, but you don't know it. He said, these people here don't even answer the mail. He said, and Dad brought back 5 inquiries from people who wanted quotations on some the air heaters, which is what the product was. I got back and threw it on for Bruce. He said, "There's 5 orders for you." He said, "Well, you don't even work for us." And I said, "No, I'm a personal friend." He said, "I can give you the damn thing. Do something with it." Well, make a long story short, obviously what he did, Bruce went over and, in his usual stage-like manner, cleaned house, and told Dad, he said, "There's one guy, there was a draftsman and a real nice gentleman that knew the mechanical technical side of the business." So Dad said, "I don't know." He said, "I didn't even know what the hell a feed water heater was." And but he came in and ran it, and he had a success out of it. But that was what brought me to Springfield, was when my father moved here, and I still had a little bit of time yet to go to Ohio State when all this was going on. I finished my college at Ohio State, and met my wife there, who was a professor of education at Ohio State. And
What was her name?
her name was Louise. Her maiden name was Reeder, R-E-E-D-E-R. He was the... I had one of those interesting fathers-in-law that come down the turnpike. He was the most published faculty member in the history of Ohio State University. And he was offered, well, he was also the one for Macmillan Company. And maybe I don't know if this was passed around, if you saw that, but this was given to him because Mr. had been a school teacher, and says my father-in-law headed up all the stuff for the education division for the Macmillan Company. They sent in the manuscript to my father-in-law, and he read it, but he was not interested in this. But he said that he thought it was great. You can see the title of the book, which of course became the national bestseller. And then Jim Michener then had described this to my father-in-law, and this got handed down to me through my.
Now, you've got to realize I can't get that on tape.
Oh, excuse me. Well,
so when this comes back to you for editing,
all right.
you are free to write in
I see what you mean.
anything you want to add.
Well, I'm not going to depart from whatever we're talking about, but I can probably clarify some things so people say, "Well, what's all this about?" You know, who's James Michener? And how did Jack Harris get talking about it?
Yeah. Okay, you got married.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we go from there?
Well, I stayed in Columbus for a few years. Our firstborn was there. I worked for the Ohio Company, Investment Securities.
Oh,
But they...
a racketeer, huh?
Well, they were one of the wolf industries, if you're familiar with the fact that the wolves...
Very much.
And other things like the Columbus Dispatch, a few little things like that. But they were a good company to work for. I had no heartburn. But I'd always been very active in my college fraternity. And all of a sudden they had a need for someone to come to national office. They'd grown so by root that our fraternity, college fraternity, was the largest national fraternity in the United States. And a number of chapters and membership and things like that. But they had a lot of trouble with the record maintenance and the finances and so forth. And I've been the district president, and they decided that maybe I should come to national office, which is what took me to Chicago.
What was the name of it?
The fraternity Sigma Alpha Epsilon, SAE. And we headquartered in Evanston and enjoyed the area very much. I mean, the thing that was nice about it, well, that's a suburban Chicago. Here we were in Evanston with where my office was, and right on the edge of the Northwest University campus. And we had a beautiful building, absolutely gorgeous building, and which we had built for the fraternity. And but that's what. So we moved into the Chicago area and lived there. I never was much of a Chicagoan because we were Evanston. But I mean, here's this one street, the northern part of Chicago, and on this side of Chicago, this side is Evanston. And we were on that side, on the Evanston side. But everything was there, and we had our first child by then, which was good, and it was a good experience for us and for him. I know that our national office was located right on the adjacent to the Northwestern campus, and 1 block from Lake Michigan. And the people who I was staying with, I'd taken over. He was our national executive, and I was the financial man. But in his absence, I took over everything. And the reason that he was gone is because he was a Rhodes Scholar, and he was they were having a reunion in England. And he'd been president of a couple of small colleges, so he left, and so it left me to run the whole thing. And it was a good experience. We enjoyed Evanston area and Des Plaines, a small community where we really had our house, and it was good. But about the time that our son, who was born up there, in Columbus, just before we moved up there, was getting ready to go to school, when I got contacted by Bruce Mayer. And Bruce Mayer.
Well, what year was this?
Oh, would have been, here. I think that I was at, I was told, let's see, where? I was the SA from 52 to 55.
Okay. Now, Bruce Mayer got you, and
Mm-hmm.
what did he say?
Well, Bruce said that I always said I was never going to have a friend of mine in business, and now he said, I got your dad down, now I'm hiring you. He said, that's a double whammy, isn't it? But I didn't stay active with Bruce's operation very long because I think from the, I just want to make sure my hierarchy was correct on it, the thing that got me into Springfield, and I got involved. I came here and worked with Patent Manufacturing Company, which is no longer in business. And Bruce had a little bit to do with getting me introduced around and so forth. And then Quick Manufacturing came to here, were later acquired by Toro. And
I can recall you being with Quick.
Yeah. Okay.
What was the name of the fellow that left town that headed that?
Well, Jim Quick, you're talking
Yeah.
about? Yeah, Jim Quick had started the business, and he had a chance to sell it, but he did. Not even the same thing. He'd rather play golf than work anyway. So. But it was a good experience because it was great for me because Jim would rather play golf, and I mean, I hadn't been working for him for a matter of a couple of months, and all of a sudden, I expected him to be gone Wednesday afternoons in the summertime, but I didn't realize he was going to be gone Thursday and Friday afternoons. Then it became, the only time he came in was on Monday because the country club was closed on Monday. So I got my experience in running something, but by default, I guess you would call it.
And what was the main product?
Power equipment, primarily riding lawnmowers was the big thing going in there. And they had a good product. Which is the reason Toro bought them, because they Toro had never been able to build what I said a great name in lawnmowers, but that was the push stop, walk behind. But they had come out 3 different times with a riding lawnmower, and all 3 were disasters. And here was the #1 lawnmower manufacturer in the country, but there were 2 people that knew how to build a riding lawnmower. They're both from Springfield, Ohio, and one was Orley Musgrave, and the other was Jim Quick.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did that, and to make a long story short, and Jim finally decided to sell, and that's when we acquired by Toro acquired us, and they acquired me as a general manager at that time. And that existed for some years until they had a change in Toro's management. They had 3 people. Toro had 3 people that were their principals in there. And David Lilly and Bob Gibson and Al Conover. And I got along great with all of them, except Al Conover could never understand why they bought a business in Springfield, Ohio. And Jim Cook and the 2 principals in the firm, the other 2 guys, decided they were going to retire at the same time, which they did. Quit manufacturing. What was left of it was now Toro. It was on the market the day after they died. I knew it was going to happen because I got a phone call to come up to Minneapolis. I went up there and went to Al Roberts, and he said, well, I have some things to talk to you about. And I said, well, when are you going to do it? He said, what do you mean, what am I going to do? I said, when are you going to close the doors? He said, what makes you think you're going to close the doors? I said, Al, you've hated us. You have fought me every bit of the way. I said, David tells me to build this product, and you do everything right to even start contacting suppliers to not ship me. I said, you're underhanded. I said, you're the new president's place. Hell, I couldn't work for you. I said, you're. And it was interesting because Toro Manufacturing then got acquired by somebody, and the first thing that they did was they took everything away from Conover. Everything.
What was his name?
Al Conover.
Conover.
Yes. First name was really Elmer, but everybody called him Al. He was a financial man.
But he never lived in Springfield.
No. I was the only one.
So when did you leave Toro?
Well, gotta look my. Okay. I was a Toro. I was in 10 years with Quick and Toro. 68, and I know what had happened. I'd gotten involved in a couple things in big trade associations, and some of the people from the Kissel Company knew me because I'd written a couple articles that got published, and they thought that maybe I was smarter than people gave me credit for. So they wanted somebody to come in and run their operation for them, so they hired me. And I didn't know much about Kissel Company, and they didn't know a damn thing about lawnmowers.
Yeah.
But I wasn't going to try and force lawnmowers down their throat, that's for sure. So, that's what got me to Kissel. Which was a good experience.
What did you do with Kissel?
Well, I ran this branch for them in Springfield, which was really, sort of a subsidiary of the whole thing. We were, to a certain extent, almost competing with each other. I mean, we had the Kissel Company and then the other Kissel Company that we had become. We had a little bit of trouble because the regular old Kissel band bunch, a couple of them in there, and I didn't make sure it well. I was just too aggressive and newfangled, and so I wrote a letter to the principals of the company, David Lilly and Al Conover, and I wrote a letter to the both of them and told them exactly what I thought could be done to that company. I said, you're in first place in that one product line, but you're in fourth place in the other. And I said, I think you ought to be in first place in everything, and I think I can tell you how to do it. Well, a couple of the older heads around there, been around for a while, didn't like that. All of a sudden, who's this young buck that comes in, used to be the financial guy, and he's telling us how to run the damn business. And I never could keep my hands out of them, so I thought they were doing wrong. And I lost a job or two along the way by people who...
Now, you were operating what at this time?
When I came with them,
Yeah.
when I first came with Toro, which was actually it was Quick and then became Toro. I was.
You mean, how did Kissel get in this? I thought Kissel was in real estate.
Oh, they were. Yeah. The sequence that followed the Quick experience. We haven't gotten to Kissel Company yet.
Yeah, you've been talking about Kissel.
Well, but then we were backing off and talking about lawnmowers. Don't mean to.
I got the impression you were talking about Kissel's manufacturing lawnmowers finally.
Well, I'm sorry. Anyway, you know better than that. Yeah. Not to.
Okay.
Why don't you?
That won't do any good.
Well, except there's a hierarchy of this type of thing in here. I didn't mean to mislead you.
Yeah. You came with Kissel to do what?
Came in there
It's a very important company.
Yes, they were. They were the second largest mortgage company in the United States.
Were you in sales or what?
No, I was in. I was the treasurer of the corporation, and it was an interesting company. Howard Noonan was a genius in his way. He had one bad habit. He had roaring drunk and disappeared. And but I know that I fell out of favor with a few people, but at least his wife would listen to me, because when all of a sudden he disappeared, the executives all turned through and find out where the hell he is and what he's doing, and I refused to do it. I said, I came here to work for Morris Company, not for a drunk. And Mary Lou Noonan respected me for that.
Hod and I were playmates as children in Hammond, Indiana.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Where his grandmother lived. His parents were not very parental kind of people in Lima, Ohio. That's how I got to know him.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Stoughton and I did business
Jackson.
with him
Yeah.
in making loans to various buildings
Yeah.
that he was putting
Yeah.
up. He was always a square shooter, but as you said, unpredictable.
Well, if he could just leave the bottle alone, that was his problem.
Right.
Oh, I'm very fond of Howard. He was treated me great.
He was smart.
He sure was.
Yeah.
He sure was.
Yeah.
And well, the thing I liked about him, and just because I was one of the chosen few, that he knew he was prone to do what he did, which is Mary Lou would have found him in a gutter someplace 4 days after he was missing. You know, and so he always tried to get some people who knew what they were doing, and I'd succeeded a couple of financial person there who had been in there, and he called me one day, and I barely knew Howard Newman, barely. And he called me one day to have lunch with me at the country club, so I said, I'll meet you out there at the lunch club. And he said, are you satisfied with what you're doing? And I said, Howard, I'm never satisfied with what I'm doing. I said, I get bored easily. And he said, I've got a job. I don't think you're very boring. And that's the Kissel Company. Now, I didn't know much about Kissel Company. I don't think many people did at that time. So, I mean, really, we're the second or third largest mortgage company in the United States, and it was the best kept secret in Springfield for some reason. And but it was a good experience. He was an interesting man. I was very fond of him. He had a bad habit with women in the area, and but he was a fair man. He was a fair man. And well, I can say that because he gave me a lot of responsibility. And he had a couple of people who had come through the ranks, mostly because they were always sweetening up to him and things like that. And he let him do it, but Howard is the kind of a guy that could spot a phony a mile away. We had some interesting conversations.
Okay, where'd you go from here?
Well, I look at my chronology on it. Okay, we're at Kissel, huh? Okay, then when they got acquired.
By whom?
Pittsburgh National Corporation, Pittsburgh National Bank.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh National. And I told them, they wanted me, I stayed there for a short time. And they said this and so on and so forth. And I told them, I said, don't give me the baloney. You're going to shut this thing down. I said, there's no reason for you physically to be here in Springfield, Ohio. I said, because you can take these people and take your key people and move them to Pittsburgh National Bank, and keep right on moving. And just marry it all together and keep on going, which is what they did. Then, so at that time, I decided I'm going to get the hell away from business. And so I'd been asked to do a couple things for Little Urbana College up there. And did you ever know Gene and Lou Moore?
No.
Nice
I
people.
knew of him.
Yeah, nice people.
Highly regarded.
Yeah, they ran the grind. He ran grinds back in the day. And delightful people. And anyway, she had met me someplace. We were committed to meeting someplace together. And she called me on the phone and she said, I understand that the company's being sold. And what are they going to do? And I said, well, I'm not too sure. And she said, do you want to stay with us? And I said, well, why do you ask? She said, well, I'd like to have lunch with me. So I had lunch with me. So that's what took me to Urbana.
Hmm. And you did what there?
I was, at my time at Urbana, I was vice president of Urbana College. And then some of my other friendships along the way, Dick Brinkman called me after I've been up there for 3 years. And Dick Brinkman said, do you want to have lunch with me? So I had lunch with him. He said, guess what? I said, what? He said, I bought a building in downtown Springfield. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Probably.
Dick Brinkman?
Oh, Dick Brinkman, yeah. And as I say, I made that switch over in Urbana University. And then Dick called me one time, and because I was the first chairman of the board at Clark State. And so we'd known each other for a long while. And so he called me and wanted to see me, and he said, well, I bought a building in downtown Springfield. And I said, well, now what the hell are you going to do with that? And he said, well, that's going to be the business division of the college, the education division. We'll teach all the business folks down there. I said, so he said, so I want you to come down and be the dean and run it for me. Well, that's pretty tempting. But Didn't have to commute to Urbana every day, and we were right downtown. So.
What year was that?
That would have been, I was dean at Clark State from 79 to 88. Mm-hmm. And from there, I retired from there in 1988. Now, I didn't totally retire. It was not my nature, but to in a formal way. Then I started doing some work with Sanders, Shipp and Brady, the CPA firm. You probably know that name.
Yes.
Sig Sander and I had been close friends for a number of years. A finer person than I've ever met.
Right.
No, can't say enough good about Sig Sander. And so I went to work with them. And they've had their problems, as you probably remember. I mean, it was too bad. Because they had the fellow who was acting as the head of it that kind of got his hand in the till and stuff like that. And that was pretty well kept quiet around town, but there were some things wrong. And I told the principals in there, including Sig, and I said, I don't want to be in the middle of this. I have not been with you people that long. And I said, you can't possibly identify me with anything that's going wrong in this place that happened in the past. And so this is the time for me to leave. And they agreed with, understood that. And so I walked out the door knowing exactly not what I was going to do. But
at what age?
At what age? Well, let's see. I was, where are we? We got me where at
At 600.
Oh, 600, yeah. Okay, so, and I was 65. 65 then. Yeah.
Okay. About time to slow down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was a unique experience, but of course they dissolved finally for a lot of reasons. They merged, and that happened in that business. And so I decided I'd retreat to something where they didn't want to do, anybody wanted it. So I was people who knew me hired me as to head up as executive director of the Springfield Technology Center.
That's news to me. What is it?
Well, it's that was actually a division of Clark State Community College Technology Center, and so I was there for 5 years until 1995 when I finally retired.
Why didn't you publicize it?
Publicize what?
The fact that you were there.
Well, I don't know. I always seem to.
I lost track of you completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I managed to get out there some way somehow. I never needed to self-promote. I guess I was doing it all the time, but it only had a degree, and I never was aggressive in promoting myself, except subtly I would think I was doing it all the time. Not the truth, but probably was.
Well, what does that particular institution do as a part of Clark State?
Well, it was just the business division of college that said it, right?
Oh.
Yeah. And that's when Dick brought me down from Urbana College, because he bought the building, and his intention was, which was correct in my opinion, was to just focus, because the business division of college was larger than all the rest of the divisions put together. I mean, the School of Nursing, Engineering, and so on and so forth were not nearly as big as we were collectively, and they were getting very crowded on the main campus, classroom space. Mm-hmm. And he had a chance to buy the old Fred Life building, which turned into the downtown center, and he brought me aboard there. Initially, I was just the director, but then the person who they had, like everybody else, I had a pretty good history in education for not having an earned doctorate. And of course, I worked with earned doctorates all my life, and I ended up firing them more than I fired, I think, sometimes. Just because a person has a handful of degrees does not mean he knows anything. He may know a lot about something, but hell, he doesn't know how to apply anything. That's for damn sure. Oh, pardon my French, but Lord save me, I've been involved with education institutions for a long time. And Dick Brinkman, for example, he was the only best rank he ever had was a master's degree. And he was very, very well acknowledged as a forerunner of in the area of technical education and things like that. He was way out in front. And he was highly regarded by the governor in the state of Ohio and everybody else in the Ohio Department of Education, as well as should be, because we were having lunch one day, and I forget who was with us, and they didn't know him very well because they called him Mr. They said, Mr. Brinkman, why is it that you never have your doctorate? And I said, well, he was too damn busy running the place, and he went through that. He said he wasn't going to take a sabbatical because we were in a growth mode. But Dick Brinkman, he always had something new coming on. He was aggressive. He didn't take time to go back and sit through classes and going through the formality of that. And I agree 100%. But my background is the same thing. I got involved in higher levels of education at both two institutions. And chairman of the board of one. I never had a doctorate. I haven't got time for it.
Okay. You retired from Clark State what year?
I retired from Clark State in 1988.
So you are officially a pensioner?
No. That was just my first retirement. Because I've been a very close friend of Sig Sander for many years. I don't know if you knew Sig or not.
Yeah, very well.
Certainly one of the finest people I ever knew. Just outstanding. And he called me and wanted to have lunch with me, and he said he talked to both Maury Shipman and Bill Brannick, the other two partners in the firm, and they wanted to know whether I'd be willing to come as a consultant and work with some of their clients. And that sounded kind of interesting. So I did from 88 to 90, did that, and then in 1990, I took another job as executive director of the Springfield Technology Center, which was operated by Clark State. So I tried to retire. I finally made it successfully in '95. But that couldn't, before that.
But you are considered a retiree of Clark State,
Yes,
right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons that. And Dick Brinkman was nobody's fool. Dick's a fine person. I have a lot of respect for Dick Brinkman. And he pointed out. He said, "You know, Jack," he said, "you and I are get to a certain age." He said, "I'd like to have you with us at that time." And he said, because you jumped around and you don't have many retirement benefits you couldn't have because you never worked with anybody for too long. He said, but he said the benefits we have in education are pretty good. And so he had some facts and figures, and I said, well, they're pretty good. He said, yeah. He said, why don't you come with me? He said, then we'll retire together. So we did.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was fortunate to work with some very interesting and very capable people, Dick Brinkman certainly being one, and Sig Sander being another. Just a lot of very good people in the town. Bruce Mayer, and I got along very well with Bruce. I knew him through my father. But I found out there's some rooms you hadn't better go in and mention his name. They'd throw you out without even talking to you. But I never judge people by what somebody else is telling me about them. I make my own decisions.
Okay, let's get on to the community.
Mm-hmm.
When you came to Springfield in the business world, what was your impression of the community and its prospects? And this was what year again?
Well, okay. That would have been when I came here. I'd been in Evanston, Illinois, I was national treasurer for the Sigma Alpha Epsilon, and I was there. And then this is when I was contacted and came to Springfield to join patent manufacturing. So
what year was that?
That would have been in. I was in Evanston through to '55, and I came to Springfield in '55.
Okay. What was your impression of Springfield then? Any particular things that stood out?
No, I think Springfield's a nice community. I mean, it's always been a little bit behind things in the economic sense. But they have a lot of nice people in Springfield. I always felt I was well treated in Springfield, and I enjoyed Springfield, and I consider myself a Springfielder.
What do you see in the future for Springfield?
A little hard to say because I have not been active in the firing line for a few years now. When you remove yourself, I was one of the people, I'm either in it up to here or I'm out of it all the way. Too bad a lot of other people don't know to do that because there's nothing worse than probably somebody second-guessing somebody that you know. And I don't think that's fair to anybody. And by the same token, if you're going to take something on, make it a full commitment. Give it a full shot. I think that's been my business philosophy for years and years and years. And
your opinion of the city administration?
I think we've been pretty lucky through the years. We've had some pretty doggone good administrators. And I think we got a good in there now, too. Yeah. it's an interesting thing, and Springfield was one of the earlier ons to adopt the concept of the city manager, with using the elected officials to their main job, and I told them that because I got involved with them a couple times on some things where we our things nationally get straightened out, and tried to point out to the commission. I said, you people are good politicians, but you're dumber than hell as businessmen. That's the reason you hire a city manager. And I think that who was Al Strauss at the time, he was in there. Really a sharp guy. Oh, fine guy. And something came up of it, and Al and I were having lunch, and he was kind of out of sorts, and I asked him what the problem was. He told me, and I forget the details. Except I do know that a couple of the commissioners had gotten involved in something that he had worked very, very hard to get straightened out, and they came in and threw their weight around. They didn't know what the hell they were talking about. Mm-hmm. And but Al Strauss was a good man. He was a smart man, and he had a lot of horse sense. So many times, and this is what I found in education, that there are an awful lot of smart people. In fact, that's the trouble with it. Everybody is more impressed with the fact you've got to earn a doctorate than the fact you can do anything. And I used to say that. Apparently that's so because on two different occasions I was the principal speaker at the Ohio Teachers Association when I gave school administrators hell and principals and things like that because earned doctorates do not make you smart. Mm-hmm. It only showed that you had enough money to get you through and you had the time to spend on it. If you had average intelligence.
Your comments about Al Strauss reminds me that I'm one of his bridge partners in a little bridge club that we have. And he's sharp.
Al and I did a lot of things together for years, and just a super guy.
Did you happen to read the editorial in the paper yesterday about interfering city commissioners?
Oh, yes.
Very interesting.
Well, Al was a master at handling the commission.
This gal that they were writing about sticks her
nose
into
she's a damn gadfly. Sure has been. Well, and Al had his gadflies too, except they never let him get under his skin.
Yeah.
He'd give them enough rope so they'd hang themselves.
Well, I hope that this doesn't wear down on Kryler because I think he is.
Matt's a good man. Matt's a good man. I'm very fond of Matt. We've been so lucky with those two in particular. I think Matt and Al Strauss are just guys who are just in a league by themselves. Any city in the United States at any time, at any population, you could have been done well with them. We're fortunate we ever had them here.
Yeah.
Good men, both of them.
Do you have much confidence in developing the downtown again?
Yeah. Not really.
I don't either.
It's a passé concept. And a lot of money. And I was president of the Downtown Association for several years because Clark State had the downtown campus, and I was the dean of that campus, which kind of dragged me into that picture. They have a lot of well-intentioned people. We have a very attractive civic center there with the buildings around it and so forth. It's a great place for festivals. A few things like that. But I don't think that that civic center downtown ever turned out the way that people intended it to be. But they don't normally. Businesses and things like that are going to locate where they want to for their own reasons. And they'll get mad at us because they don't want to be sitting on your curb in downtown Springfield. It's a great place for attorneys.
Yeah. How about a great place for preachers?
Well, I think there's room for preachers any place.
Yeah.
And I've known many through the years. Although I'm a member of Covenant Church, I'm not one that... You're not in great danger of being trampled every day, every Sunday, that I'm going to be the first in line. But we've had excellent ministers at Covenant. We've had some real sad sights and mistakes. But that's happened with every single church, isn't it?
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And we've had some good people. And I have, frankly, I have had a great deal of affection for the Jewish community in Springfield. My wife, she thought the Sid Sanders was the finest person I ever lived. And she may have been right. I've never met a better man than Sid Sanders.
Right.
Outstanding.
And his wife.
Yes, was equally good.
Yeah, they're great. Okay, we've come to the end of the tape, young man.
Well, I feel like a little older after that.
What will happen is that a very delightful person at Wittenberg, who is a retiree, stays on part-time to do secretarial work for Kinnison, and I get in on it too.
Mm-hmm.
So as she gets time, she'll type this up, and I'll bring it to you, and you do...
Chaos.